This week, Ron Reiter, co-founder and CTO of Centra, is with us to discuss being an investor and entrepreneur in data security. Then Ryan Pullen, head of cybersecurity at Stripe OLT, joins us to talk about building the right business culture to manage human error. Finally, in the enterprise security news, funding announcements take a bit of a break. We explore a few new vendors and organizations that have come to our attention recently. Wiz researchers annoy yet another cloud service by pointing out ridiculous vulnerabilities. IBM Cloud is the one this time. Docker Hub has tons of shady stuffs going on. EU strengthens cybersecurity with new legislation. The U.S. Department of Defense releases zero trust strategy. Microsoft 365 outlawed in the EU. Ransomware makes up the majority of all UK government crisis management meetings. And AI can now tell kids bedtime stories, but do we really want them to? All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Don't leave the door open. Secure your APIs with the Curity Identity Server. Curity allows you to centralize identity management policies with a solution developed by an expert team using well-established standards. Curity facilitates scalable security for apps and websites by offering a unique combination of identity and access management with API security. Protect your users, secure apps and websites, manage API access. Start your free trial today at securityweekly.com/curity. The shift to remote and hybrid work over the past 2 years has accelerated application development on cloud infrastructure. However, securing these new assets has lagged behind. Qualys CloudView, the next generation of cloud security posture management, delivers an end-to-end multi-cloud security and compliance solution encompassing the entire application lifecycle from build to runtime. CloudView enables enterprises to assess their cloud security and compliance posture, identify risks and gaps, auto-remediate issues, proactively enforce best practices, and prove compliance in audits rapidly and efficiently. Identify your most vulnerable cloud assets by visiting securityweekly.com/Qualys.
We know that many of you are looking to bolster your security posture with cloud-native app protection and XDR. So if you haven't heard of Uptycs, put them on your radar. They offer both cloud and endpoint security in a single solution. Listeners can use Uptycs for up to 1,000 assets for a full year for only $1. But hurry, this offer available only through December 31st at securityweekly.com/Uptycs. That's securityweekly.com/UPTYCS. All right. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Antarctica Day. This is episode 298, recorded on Thursday, December 1st, 2022. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the master of marketing, the mayor of mayhem, the arch nemesis of chocolate, Tyler Shields. How are you, Chocolate?
I am all right. Thank gosh. I have not run into any chocolate lately. There's been no chocolate murders.
Good to hear. We also have the czar of zero trust, the captain of content, the supply chain whisperer, Katie Teitler. How are you, Katie?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm getting over probably the worst flu I've ever had.
Oh,
yeah. I had a fever for 7 days. It was madness.
Did that coincide with Turkey Day?
Oh yeah. I get hit with a fever. It was Wednesday afternoon that I realized something was wrong. So yeah, had to cancel 3 different Thanksgiving things. Yeah.
Oh, that's such a bummer.
And I was supposed to cook for all 3 of them. So yeah, that was fun. My kids jumped in and got some of the cooking done for me, so it wasn't a complete loss. I still sent food. But finally, also joining us is Sean Metcalf, for whom I do not have a fancy intro yet, but I will eventually, Sean. How are you?
Doing good, thanks. We'll collaborate on something that's just as catchy as the others, and hopefully it'll measure up. Doing good. Post Thanksgiving, recovering, getting back into the swing of things. Great to be back. Thanks.
Yes, Tyler, my beard is going AWOL. That's one of the things when I was sick, I didn't have a chance to take care of it, and my whole facial hair situation is asymmetric entirely. Like
Adrian,
I like a crop circle over here and a bald spot over here. Yeah.
I asked that in a private back channel just so that it wouldn't call it out publicly, and then you go and like drop the bomb like, nope, it's AWOL. This shit's going crazy.
It's fine. It's fine. It's been a week.
It has, clearly, my friend.
No, I look at that and I try and pat it down. I can't let it get longer than a certain length, or it just starts doing weird stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Red Bull gives you wings, Adrian. Red Bull gives you wings.
So Antarctica Day, before we launch into this interview, went down a rabbit hole with this one. That was kind of fun. Not sure how you want to celebrate. Maybe watch a documentary on Antarctica, or maybe Happy Feet or something like that. But the reason today is Antarctica Day is the original Antarctic Treaty was signed on December 1st. And the treaty basically sets some basic rules, like no fighting on Antarctica, no putting nuclear waste there, no disposing of your trash, and everyone has to get along and share. So basically, it's like the world's most dangerous, coldest kindergarten environment.
Wow.
So thought that was interesting. Also, fun fact. It wasn't discovered until 1820, which means we knew the entire solar system, Pluto excluded, before we knew all the continents.
Oh, so that is wild.
That hadn't occurred to me.
That's a true interesting piece of bar trivia that could be used right there. I like that one.
Yeah, me too. We knew the extent of for the most part, the extent of the solar system before the extent of our own planet in terms of landmass. And 90% of the planet's ice is on Antarctica, and that's where all the evidence of aliens is, according to The Thing and X-Files, and maybe some other movies. All right, quick announcement before we jump into our first interview here. Security Weekly listeners, we need to hear your voices. Leave us your feedback on Apple Podcasts and submit a screenshot to our giveaway form for a chance to win a $100 gift card from Hacker Warehouse. This giveaway will be open until the end of the year. We appreciate your honest feedback so we can continue to make great content for our audience. Visit securityweekly.com/giveaway to enter. All right, and looking forward to reading those reviews as well. Also, welcome to everybody watching on YouTube. All of a sudden, our views on YouTube went from a couple hundred per episode to a couple thousand per episode. So
that's awesome.
It's pretty awesome to see. Big jump like that.
Well, we need to do, Adrian, though, is if you're on YouTube, you got to smash the like, smash the subscribe, smash the notify buttons, all those notify things.
Yeah, the bell. It's a bell.
The bell. That's right.
Hit the bell. Yeah, subscribe, and we'll let you know when this goes live, because we do record live. If you're watching us on YouTube at some point and you don't realize that we stream live to both Twitch and YouTube, we do that 3 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. All right, and for our first interview today, the gentleman we have with us is an investor and an entrepreneur. So that's one of our main topics for today. And he's also founder of a DSPM startup, which is an area, a new category in cybersecurity that we've been discussing quite a bit. That investor and entrepreneur is Ron Reiter, co-founder and CTO of Centra. After selling his first company, Crosswise, to Oracle in 2016, Ron made a dozen investments in other cybersecurity startups, and eventually he left Oracle to start his current company, Centra. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Absolutely. It's good conversation that looking forward to. I think things are I feel a little bit more stable than they were. I think in the around the summertime, when the stocks were dropping and everything, and everybody didn't really know where this was going. Not that we entirely do at this point either. I think a lot of those valuation drops are still pretty solid. And then with everything going on in the crypto space, that doesn't really have a direct impact on us here, but certainly feels like I think contributes to the general unease that I think might exist around investments and raising money and things like that in general. I think people are maybe clutching things a little bit closer to their chest right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the crypto space especially is very, very hyped up, mostly because it's very speculative. Not a lot of people know how things will end up there in terms of use cases, and I think that's why we're seeing the most, the drop there, and all the companies, BlockFi, Celsius, crashing. It's just because people are scared and pulling their money out. But I think for cybersecurity and other fintech and other places that other startup categories that have a good round of use cases and in general things that are that seem to be of use to the world. I think now there's a kind of some sort of incline, a very slight incline in optimism around these spaces.
And we're now getting requests for investment advice from Twitch viewers.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to provide any any investment advice here, but certainly I think if crypto didn't feel volatile to you before, like a risky investment, I don't know what I can say to convince you, but it definitely is.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very pessimistic on that field. If you want my crypto advice, it's stick to the things that people want, like Bitcoin, Ethereum. Everything else there is basically speculations on other use cases. Even the cybersecurity startups assume that there are going to be use cases on the blockchain, which is why cybersecurity for crypto is also in question right now in terms of how usable it is and how important it is to the world. So it's interesting, and I have a lot of Bitcoin myself, by the way, and I really appreciate the technology. But I think Bitcoin is one thing, and Web3 is a completely different thing.
So, so Ron, you and I have similar backgrounds. We both come from the technology world. We've both been in cyber most, if not all, of our career. We've had a couple of successful exits, and we've become cybersecurity-focused angel investors. One of the things I love to talk about with technologists such as yourself is kind of that crystal ball futures, of course, but also investment theses. What gets you excited today? Now, clearly, your current company, Centra, is doing data-centric cloud security, right? So obviously you have a investment thesis around that, where you're investing your personal time. But setting that one aside, what areas of focus in cyber today make you go, hey, I'm super excited about that? That seems like a great growth area.
That's a great question. I think naturally everything about the cloud is obvious, right? I think data security is only one thing that's going to change in the cloud, but everything from CSPMs, identity management, API security, everything is basically going to change and have its own version of how you do things in the cloud. I think data security is just one of them, but you can say that for posture management, for identity management, everything, or even for backups, right? Do you want to know if your whole organization is backed up? So not only for cybersecurity, but also for just about any IT related use case, I think there's going to be a new version of a startup for the cloud, which will kind of beat the old world completely. And it's interesting to see, because it really could potentially destroy a lot of companies and create a lot of new huge companies. I think Wiz is a good example of a company that could easily make the older companies in the cybersecurity categories kind of less relevant. But that's just in security. I think in every category you can see that in the cloud. I think that's one thing, and since I'm really into IT DevOps security, that's really where my focus is. But I think in terms of blockchain and crypto, I think I mentioned it. I don't think it's a really interesting place to be at right now, because mostly the use cases there aren't proven. But definitely, I think the 2020s is definitely a year where the banks and fintech are going to go through a very big revolution. You can see it with startups like Melio or Unit or just Brex, like just a bunch of them. Rapid, they're all like just changing the whole fintech ecosystem, because everything is becoming more open and more API based and API driven. So I think that's an obvious one. So I think basically, I would say the cloud and fintech are the two things that I'm most excited about, and I think are the biggest changes in this decade.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like specifically for me, I have an investment thesis around cybersecurity, every sub-segment of cybersecurity being reinvented based off of the transition to cloud. And it's funny because you would have thought that cyber would have reinvented by now with much of this transition to cloud starting years ago. But it's just been such a slow boil for cloud transition that cyber has just now started to really catch up, maybe in the last 2 years. I also love a few other ideas around like application security, API security being reinvented due to cloud and how we build applications. Talk to me a little bit about the founding, and I hope I'm not stealing all of Adrian's thunder, but talk to me a little bit about the founding of Centra. I always find it very interesting to discuss the moment of clarity when a founder goes, "Yep, that's the one that we want to do. That's what we want to build." Can you tell us a little bit about that moment?
Sure. So I think, most of my life, I kind of collected tools to understand the problems that are arising in the world around cybersecurity and data. And I think, I've been a cybersecurity practitioner in the Army. I've been a data engineer at Crosswise. So I have a kind of a good grasp of where the world is going in terms of the cloud. And a funny story. So basically what happened to me in 2019, I was in Oracle, right? And I was a manager there, and suddenly I got this notice that there was a server that was found open to the internet that was potentially exposing PII. I'll stop there because I don't want to get in trouble. But long story short, that was a big deal. And I did notice something about that world, and I kind of understood that there's not much technology nowadays that would be potentially able to even notice that thing, right? Because it's not trivial to understand what is a data vulnerability. Having a server open to the internet with bad security posture means nothing about the risk to the organization. So without understanding the sensitivity of the data around it, it's just a lot of noise. So once you reduce data and exposure of data with vulnerable infrastructure or issues around data, then you get a very, very small subset, and that's really where the focus should be. And of course, the thesis around CSPMs goes right into the DSPM world, right? The reason that the CSPMs are huge is because posture of security changes in the cloud much more than it used to. And in data, it's even worse because there's every day there's more data being collected, more people are accessing the data inside the organization. And data is being duplicated, more tools, more third-party tools need to process the data, so you send it in and out. You have SaaS services, you have PaaS services. So the data of your organization is basically jumping everywhere, and there's nothing that can actually tell you where your data is. So I think it's an order of magnitude of a bigger issue than cloud security posture. But it's kind of the same, the problem is the cloud, right? The cloud is just kind of, it's basically putting the organization in a state where they need to put the data everywhere. And if they don't do it, then they kind of hurt the potential of the company, right? So everyone does it because they're not going to wait for security to catch up, right? So that's really what my thesis was, and I kind of understood that, since in 2010 it was software is eating the world, now in 2020 it's data is eating the world. Data is the most valuable asset today. Data is king, and data is going to be more and more significant. And we will see that by large companies having a very large market share based on the data that they have. So obviously the need for protecting that data wherever it is, it's going to grow exponentially. Put that with cloud growth, which is just beginning, right? The cloud is like the big companies are still not in the cloud. You multiply that by the problem that they're going to see. They're not even seeing it. It's like basically seeing a train hurtling 200 miles an hour into a wall, and no one's seeing it. And I'm very convinced that this is a huge problem, and we're seeing a lot of more compliance and regulation around data breaches, and the understanding that data leaks is happening on a daily basis, and the price of data leaks is going up. So we're seeing this thing, and nothing seems to stop it. So, and I think it all begins and all starts with knowing where your data is, and then you can protect it. And there was no tool anywhere that could automatically tell you where your sensitive data is. That was 2021, and nowadays I think DSPM is already becoming a category. I think we thought we invented the term DSPM about June 2021. Nowadays, Gartner knows what DSPM is. Every cybersecurity vendor knows what it is. Every large security vendor is basically looking to build or acquire a company in that space. I think it's the quickest creation of a category that I've seen in cybersecurity. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for me, but it's definitely very stressful.
Ron, I think your characterization that you said is accurate. I mean, we're seeing the same thing. For years, companies have been keeping their data in warehouses of some sort, whether that's a SQL database or other on-prem. And now that they have the opportunity to leverage the cloud, be it Azure, AWS, GCP, or many other SaaS services, that data just kind of sprawls everywhere. Sometimes it's categorized, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's encrypted, sometimes it's not. So I've definitely seen with the cloud, we have this issue it's effectively two-pronged. One is the identity side of it, which is what I tend to focus on. The other side is data, which you're definitely talking about and focused on with Centra. How do you see a solution to this moving forward with the data kind of spread everywhere across multiple cloud vendors in different data storage types, be it a relational graph database or NoSQL database or SQL or somewhere else, and then how best to handle that different types of data, whether it's categorized, tagged, or other?
Great question. So I think the age of DLP, or the concept of having a DLP, I think is kind of over. People realize that you can contain data in the way that you're actually putting a lid on it and looking at everything that's going in and out and saying, this is okay, this is not okay. In the age of the cloud, it's just too expensive to do it, and it's impossible to do it. So I think nowadays the reality kind of forces us to do something else, which is to map out all the data in a way that's not, you're not putting yourself in line with all the different types of, you're not putting proxies everywhere and making sure that data is being controlled. That's never going to work. So the approach needs to be knowing where all your data is, even if it's on IaaS, it's on PaaS, it's on SaaS, everywhere, and being able to control it in some ways, right? So these controls are basically what the organization can use to kind of draw a virtual perimeter around the data. As long as it knows about the data and it knows who has access to the data and it knows if data has been duplicated, then the organization can have a pretty good idea of what's going on with the data. So yeah, it might mean that there might be a data leak, but it's only because it was overprivileged to begin with, but now you know it, right? You allowed it to be in a position where it could be duplicated, or you haven't fixed the security issue that is, on the storing the data. So I think that's really where you have to start, and I think organizations that have a good idea of where their data is, which is in the billions or in the petabytes, billions of files in the petabytes. So I think they should be in a good position. Of course, they need a tool that will help them do that, and that's why Accenture exists, obviously, because that tool is not only about discovering the data and doing classification and the understanding of how much data is at risk. It's also about helping them remediate the issues, and that's a whole different world in data. How do you do data remediation? That's a topic on its own.
Now, I couldn't agree with you more about DLP kind of being the older school approach, and now we need to approach this issue with new solutions, because it is very different now with data being stored in on-prem as well as cloud environments. You've talked before about a data attack surface. Can you go into a little bit about that and how Centra is working towards helping solve that?
Of course. So data attack surface is basically a measure of how secure your organization is, so that when there is some sort of data breach, what are the odds that there will be a major data leak that will cause some business malfunction or any damage to your business. So you can look at it as basically what are the chances of either an insider threat or someone from the outside to gain access to sensitive data. So the more data that you have that isn't being used right now, puts your data at risk. So that's what we call shadow data, right? So data that you haven't really known that you're not using anymore. Someone may have forgotten it somewhere. It's like it's sort of abandoned. It puts your organization at risk because no one knows about it anymore. So the fact that no one knows about it means that there's a bigger chance of people forgetting it, which puts your organization more at risk. I think that's just one example. But of course, any risk factor on data increases your data attack surface. So the more the security posture of the infrastructure that holds the data is weak, or the more copies you have of sensitive data, or the data could be, of course, overprivileged, just like infrastructure could be overprivileged. So if it's overprivileged, then it means that there's the data attack surface is bigger. So if you put all these things together, you can even construct some sort of score that could even tell you what is the probability of you having a data leak if someone actually manages to breach the organization. And I think another thing that our experience kind of tells us is that every organization is going to get breached, right? There's no way you might know about it, you might not know about it, but you need to work under the assumption that your organization will get breached, which is always why you would want to always minimize the data attack surface as much as you can.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that. With what you said about the sensitivity of things and where data is, certainly a lot of this ends up being something that can be related to industry. So obviously, healthcare in the U.S. versus healthcare in other countries, financial systems, again, depending on where it is. Do you have ideas around, or does your solution have ideas around how to better protect those specific industry types of data? I mean, DLP was supposed to give us an idea of what certain types of numbers look like a credit card number. But that's very specific and a sort of identified to a specific use case versus something that needs to be more flexible, given the cloud world that we're in and the different types of data that we have.
Yeah, so I think I'll divide my answer into two. So I think first of all, there is the question of tagging your data, right? Understanding where and what type of data it is, and then how sensitive it is to your organization. And then there's the world of compliance and governance, privacy, all these different aspects of how basically the outside is telling you to store your data. So I think Centra, one of the things that we try to do as automatic as possible is to help the organization with telling them what types of data you have. We'll obviously find it automatically, but basically to help the organization understand their data. Once you have a good understanding of your data, then there's a lot of different risk factors that you would need to minimize. So some of them would be compliance based. So for example, Centra has understanding of what type of data you have in terms of should it be in EU region or in the US region? Are these emails supposed to be they're probably German citizens, they're probably not supposed to be in outside of Germany, right? So that's called data locality. So these types of frameworks are things that every organization needs to understand and basically the regulations have to be accepted and tools such as Centra can actually make these things much easier for the organization to comply with. And I think in the world is also going towards a place where more and more of these regulations are going to affect and make the organization's life much harder, and without a tool that will automatically help them comply with all these different types of new data regulations, then it's going to be very hard to hold data. It's just becoming increasingly hard to hold sensitive data, and increasingly complex and expensive because of these things. And I think that's a very big unknown for how the world is going to develop. I think we can see it in healthcare data. Healthcare is very hard in terms of regulation, but I think the rest of the categories, financial data, even not only PII, but also even how you store your sensitive your source code, right? That could even be an issue. And I think overall, what I'm basically trying to say is that understanding your data and complying with all the different types of regulations that in the future is going to be a very huge problem that organization will definitely need a lot of help from the outside.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to characterize the issues that we're seeing, and certainly as we said, kind of how this thing sprawls. What's the key value proposition that Centra brings to the table around helping control and get a better feel for this data, as well as protecting it, such as through encryption or something else?
So basically, what we do, the basics of Centra is automatic discovery and classification of data wherever it is. So we scan things like managed data stores, unmanaged data stores, and API-based data stores such as S3. We also do some structuring of the data, so we would understand, for example, in unstructured databases such as S3, we would understand the structure, and we would even be able to understand kind of the distinct data assets and kind of the data flows that create those data assets. Once we have a good idea of the type of data that you have wherever it is, then we do the classification automatically. And on top of that, we do a risk assessment. So risk assessment is based on three things: security posture, which is whether or not the data is encrypted, understanding of whether or not it's backed up. Is there retention rules? Is it publicly accessible? Or even we can use external information from other CSPMs or such to understand the infrastructure. We also try to understand if data is being moved around the organization. So, for example, we would know that a specific piece of data would be replicated across 2 different data stores, 2 different regions, 2 different anything, basically, virtually any place that you can replicate the data, we will probably find it. And the last, and I think the most interesting part is, so we have a data authorization graph that basically tells you for every piece of data in your organization, who has access to it. And being able to understand that picture gives you a lot of understanding of how people inside and outside of your organization have access to sensitive data. For example, if you would, have a Datadog user that can go into your cloud environment, and you would want to know what happens if Datadog was to be breached, then what type of sensitive information would it have access to? And that's one of the things that we can also provide. So, and basically all of these things which incorporate the risk of the data or the data attack surface, we have an automatic policy engine that can create alerts based on policy violations that we can basically the system can trigger automatically. And these things, basically, we have a lot of out-of-the-box policies that give you, for example, what I said before, compliance or security-related policies that would just, if you would just install Sentry, it would automatically kind of be covered in that sense.
So I'm going to take a quick gear shift and get back to a little bit less of the data discussion and a little bit more of the angel investing discussion, because I think you have a very, very cool and very unique, impressive background and impressive track record when it comes to seed investing. For those that don't know, Ron on his LinkedIn has seed investments listed, including major companies such as Axonius, Talon, Cyber, Rookout, all sorts of really cool companies. How did you get into the angel investing side of what you do, Ron? And tell me a little bit about where your deal flow comes from and what some of your investing philosophies might be there.
So I think I was very lucky because first of all, Israel is very small, so it's very like everyone here knows each other. So in terms of opportunities, you kind of have a lot to invest in. But I think why I've been lucky is because since I've been a second timer and sold a company, a lot of people want my advice, and I've kind of built my reputation around being this second timer, building a company that can help others build and sell their companies, or build it to an IPO. And I've been advising a lot of startups, and then I've noticed that it kind of gives me the deal flow to do investments, and you have the money, right, to invest, because you sell the company, and then you have a lot of very, very talented people coming and asking you for advice. And if there's one thing I'm good at, is identifying when people are smarter than me. So I've just decided to take basically use my access to very interesting startups and just invest in people who I really think are exceptional entrepreneurs that would wish that others would invest in, that would everyone would want to go into deals such as Guardio or Talon, or these are very, very attractive startups that have a very, very significant potential upside, right? Because that's how it works with second timers, third timers, and I think basically all these companies, such as myself, we kind of look for building out a very large angel pool of people that can help. Basically, not only with their being just an angel investor and using their name, but also with advice. So a lot of people come to me and want me to invest so that I can also help out in the startup in some sort of way. But I think really it's an honor for me, because a lot of these startups want me on their cap table, and for me it's the best and the easiest type of investment, because I get to be in a place where it's almost obvious that going to have a good outcome, because a lot of people want to invest in some companies. So
yeah, it's really interesting. I come from a similar background as you, so I've had very similar results and stories. It's funny. I read an article this morning, and I write a weekly newsletter called the Cyber Why. And inside the Cyber Why, I wrote a paragraph today equating early stage seed and angel investing to similar to like the poker game, where there's a combination of luck with skill. If you had to sit down and say angel investing and seed investing, early, super early stage investing, would you say it's more luck or more skill, or kind of somewhere in the middle that's gotten you the success that you've gotten?
Well, I think 5 or 6 years ago, I would say maybe luck. But I think nowadays, if you have good access, maybe I'll add a third one, access, right? I think the most significant IRR predictor is access. Because the best of the companies would always want to, raise money from Andreessen Horowitz, right? So obviously they don't need to work hard to identify these, because the best of the entrepreneurs will come, directly to them. So, I mean, taking that out, I think, over time you do kind of, I mean, it would become obviously easier to invest in things in areas that you do understand, in that, which is why I kind of now invest more and more in cyber, because it's much easier for me to know what would work and what wouldn't work. And it's the question is very simple. Invest in very good entrepreneurs that have the right approach for how to find a problem in cybersecurity. And there are some areas that I invest in and some areas that I don't invest in. For example, cyber for crypto is something that is hard for me to invest in. So I do have my thesis. So hope I was clear.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I want to follow up with one other question before I pass it off to some of the other co-hosts here. What in particular do you look for? So it's globally stated by pretty much every early stage investor that we invest in people, right? We invest in the people. Obviously, there has to be good technology or at least a good idea, but it's so early stage, it's very difficult to say whether the idea is even going to come to fruition in the right way, whether they're going to get product market fit. So most super early stage investors say, hey, we invest in the people. What do you look for in the people you invest in, or in that super early seed stage?
So obviously, that they would be smarter than me. That's the most important thing. But I think for a CEO, I would say, someone who's very who sees the world as it is, very, very on the ground, and someone who really understands how the world looks like. Someone that if I would have a conversation with him on what I think about other companies and how the world is going to look like in 5 years from now, then we kind of see the same things, right? And from a technical co-founder, that's much easier for me to assess. I think, first of all, it's very easy for me to see that someone really is a strong technical founder. But I think technical founders also have to be very, very good people leaders. And a lot of times I've been seeing companies that don't have that trait for technical founders. So if you're a person that people kind of want to work for, if you're a person that is kind of the first thing that comes out of an interaction with you is I want to work for you, or you seem like an amazing leader, or someone who would be standing in front of a crowd of 100 people and speaking to them and telling them about how the company is doing. If that makes sense, then I would definitely invest. It's kind of an aura around the people that it's kind of easy to spot those leaders, and I think that's the most important. People who are they're appreciated, their opinions are appreciated, and that's basically, I think, the most important trait that I always look for.
That's awesome insights, Ron. Thank you for all that. All right, and we've got to go ahead and wrap here, but Ron, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today and sharing all the insights on both the DSPM side of things and the investment side of things. This was really great.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure.
All right, and stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk building the right business culture to manage human error with Ryan Pullen from Stripe OLT.